I'm Ransom, and welcome to Third City Christian Church. This year's women's event, Love Your Story, is Saturday, March 30th. Tickets are $30 per person, including breakfast and lunch, and are available at the table in the plaza. Today is the last day to sign up. Experience Transformation, a night of worship, is this Tuesday, March 12th from 7 to 8 p.m. here in the Worship Center. You are invited to sing songs of praise to our Creator and take communion together as a community of believers. Our baby dedication celebration for ages 2 and under is Saturday, March 23rd and Sunday, March 24th. The registration deadline is next Sunday, March 17th. Our Easter extravaganza is the weekend before Easter on Saturday, April 13th at 9 and 11 a.m. We need volunteers and individually wrapped pieces of candy to fill 20 large coolers and 5,000 plastic eggs. Please leave candy in the designated containers throughout our building. Show us how you're living out Love Unlimited. Simply use the hashtag ThirdCityC when posting to Twitter or Instagram and be featured on our walls display. We exist to worship God, serve Him with our lives, and grow as followers of Jesus Christ. Third City is Love Unlimited.
Love As you make your way back to your seats this morning, let's continue in worship, singing this song out, Fade Away. We're in a new series we're calling Radical. We're excited to be sharing from God's Word this morning. Let's sing this out.
Speak to me. You're the only voice I want to hear. Walk with me. Show me who you are as I draw near. If you're not in, I don't
we would turn our eyes to you. As we start this new radical series, God, we're going to take this opportunity to really focus on you. We want to take this opportunity to focus on your word as we look at some of the teachings of Jesus. We get closer and closer to this time of Easter, where we get to celebrate the resurrection of your Son. So, Lord, I pray that this morning our hearts would be on you, our minds would be on you. We would hear the words from your Bible. It's amazing that over 2,000 years ago is when these events took place, and yet they're still extremely relevant today. Speak to us this morning. Amen. You may be seated.
Well, good morning. Spring forward, forward with spring. Let's go spring. Come on, spring. How many of you love Play-Doh? Yeah? Smell of it? I always thought it smelled like Jim Locker. But some of you like it. I know you do. It's hard to get out of a can, though. Now, the thing about Play-Doh is you like it because it's fun. You can shape it into whatever your imagination will allow you to do, and even if it doesn't look like that, you say it does. And I think we do something like this similar with Jesus. I think we try to shape Jesus into something that we want Jesus to be rather than what Jesus really is. I mean, I think it's real common to do that. I know I do that. Maybe you can relate to that. This is like my 42nd attempt at Jesus, okay? So forgive me if I'll just make the Jesus sitting on the edge of a podium without arms. That's about how much time I have. Arms take a lot of time. But anyway, we do this. I mean, and give me some ideas about that. So, safety net Jesus. That's the mold. Safety net Jesus. To provide me safety to keep me out of whatever version of hell I've created for myself. How about vending machine Jesus? That's the Jesus that I go up to the machine and say, I want this, boom, please drop it in the slot, do it quickly. People do that with Jesus. BFF Jesus. He's my buddy, he's my friend. That is until he starts pushing my buttons and changing my flaws, and then I'll get another friend, thank you very much. What about good luck Jesus? I think a lot of people have good luck Jesus, the Lucky Charm Jesus. Kind of like the farmer I knew in Arapahoe. He only came to church when he needed rain. And it was in the 80s. We needed rain a lot. He was a big church attender until it rained. He always said, hey, preacher, pray for it to rain. I thought, I shouldn't because you won't come to church. That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't. But we shape Jesus, we mold him into what, and this is common to what we want him to be. And I think we just, we get tired of what he is. We just ball him up and we try over again. I think that's pretty common for people to do that. This morning we're entering into a new series we're calling Radical. Maybe you noticed, I don't know. But anyway, this series is going to challenge us to ask, am I following the real Jesus or the one I'm molding for myself? But we have to grasp this. If we're really going to be what he wants us to be and what we need to be, we need to understand that he needs to do the molding. Not me. Isaiah 64:8 says it this way. You, Lord, are our Father. We are the clay. You are the potter. We are the work of your hand. Now, in this relationship, he intends for it to be that way. So in this series, we will ask, who's trying to shape who? Am I trying to make Jesus into what Jesus to be, or am I being pliable so that he can make me out to what he needs me to be for myself and for him? Because when you look at this life and you look at this teaching of Jesus, you realize that he was very radical. And he still calls us to this today. Think about this. He entered into this tiny country, Israel. And this was a country that had been under Roman domination for roughly 200 years. And they did not like being under the Roman thumb. And yet when Jesus came, the people wanted to manipulate Jesus then just like people do today. Israel was longing for a Messiah who would come and lead people from the freedom of oppression of Rome. And so then Jesus started teaching, and his words were tremendous. I mean, he taught with such authority. And then to double up on that, he did these miraculous things. I mean, truly miraculous things. And so they started asking the question, could this be the one? Is this the one that the prophets spoke about? But Jesus, though he came to free people from oppression, it wasn't just those people in that day. He came to free all of us in all time frames and all times from the oppression of our sin and the death that follows. But they wanted to mold him into a military Jesus. And so when he caught on to that, he started saying very radical things. For instance, in Luke chapter 14, it says large crowds were traveling with Jesus. So he was very popular. Very popular. And turning to them, like he's walking and there's this crowd of people behind him. That's the way I see this. Turning to them, he said, if anyone comes after me and does not hate, and listen to the terminology, does not hate his father and mother, does not hate his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even their very life, their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Now, think about this. It's almost impossible, right? Because I don't know about you, I'm not into hating my parents and my spouse and my kids and even myself, okay? But he's telling us this radical comparative thing. He's saying, in essence, you got to put me first, and then you can follow me. And then he talks about the cross, right? I mean, you think about this. They heard the cross. They didn't think about a little piece of jewelry we hang around our neck, a little gold cross. They didn't think about some cool tattoo you had slapped on your body. They didn't think about, some icon we have in a church building. When they heard the word cross, because this was even before he died on the cross, they thought about one thing: Roman oppression, Romans who kill us. Romans who kill us in the most violent way possible. That's what they thought about. So stick that into your Play-Doh can. He calls us to this radical commitment. Yet he said things like this. I mean, this is like the opposite of that, right? He says in John 10, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. Me, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. So how could he call us to die in one breath, to give up everything that gets in the way of following him in one breath, and then on the other hand say, come to me for life, because I'm going to give my life for you? It seems like an oxymoron, right? It's like saying open secret or amazingly awful, which proves to you that we use the word amazing way too much in our culture, or deafening silence, or clearly confused, or Microsoft works. It oxymoron, right? It doesn't. How do you give up your life and then find it? Here's another contradiction, seemingly at least. Matthew chapter 16. Whoever wants to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for me, Jesus says, will find it. So how do you save your life by losing it? How do you gain life? How do you find life by losing your life? He shows us. He died so that we might what? Live. That's right. He took a cross, not a crown. He lived a radical life, not of power, but rather of humility. And his life wasn't about consuming. It was about expelling, about giving. He did it with humility, not with pride. And he really calls us to this very same journey, that of picking up our cross of sacrifice so that we can find true life. And it's radical. There's no other way to put it. One of the great privileges of being a minister is that I see people who commit their lives and then in turn they start getting life. It's amazing. It's a miracle. It's really a miracle. And when you ask people, well, why are you doing that? Why are you committing to so much? They'll say things like, well, I get so much more in return than I give. Or they'll say, it just fills my bucket. I hear that a lot. Or they'll say, this is where I find meaning. This is where I get purpose. Or they say, well, believe me, it helps me a lot more than it helps anybody that I help. Because it's true. You know, the thing is, religion is my attempt to make God like me. That's what religion is. Honestly, I think that following Jesus would be easier if I just did religion. I really do. If I just had a checklist and I just did this, then I think that would be the easiest way, I should say, for me to follow Jesus. Go to church, check. Do a week in the nursery, check. Give some money, check. Give up red meat for 40 days, check. I mean, just do religion. And then I look at the list and I think, wait a minute. There's nothing sustaining there for me. And I fail so often. If I rely on religion to save me, it really is my attempt to save myself. And I'm trying to save myself by being good enough so that God might like me. It's my attempt to mold me into something I think God can like. I used this word last week, and I'm going to keep using it for a while, the word religion. Religion is my attempt to create God, to mold God into my way or to my liking. Or it's my attempt to mold me into my image of who I think God will like himself. But what I'm suggesting to you today is there's a third way. There's a radical way. It's not to mold God into my version of God. It's not to mold me into my version of who I think God will like. No, the best version comes when I let him mold me. But it's radical. It really is. It's such a privilege to serve in a church where this Jesus-style radicalism really does exist. And I was thinking about people who demonstrate this radical way around here. And I didn't ask any of them permission to use their names, so I can't do that. And they probably wouldn't have let me do that anyway because they're humble people. So I'm just going to describe to you how God has molded some of them and how life is being brought to our world because he's brought life to them. And believe me, this is not an exhaustive list. But when I think about someone living a radical life, I think about the woman who volunteers literally thousands of hours here every year to Element Student Ministries. And she comes and she just does whatever she can to make Element great for our coaches and our students. To me, that's radical. She doesn't think so, but I do. When I think of somebody living a radical life, I think of the family who purposely put themselves in a neighborhood where they can impact their neighbors with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And believe me, this is a neighborhood that doesn't even resemble what their income could allow. But that's radical. When I think of somebody living the radical life, I think of the man from our church family who left a lucrative construction business to work at a Christian college so he could have a small part in training men and women to go take the gospel into our world. Or I think about the PA in our church whose heart and life are drawn to underprivileged people all over the world. So virtually every year she either leads a missions trip, goes on a missions trip, or if she's not doing that, she's doing something here locally to serve people in our community, to reach out to people who need it. When I think of radical, I think about the man who leads our entire community to help feed hungry people and who has for about 20 years. When I think about somebody living a radical life, I think about the man who retired from leadership and now builds habitat houses in his spare time. And when he has a little bit extra time, he comes up here and fixes the holes in our wall that are made by Connect and Shine and Element and you name it, because we have a lot of kids in our building every day of the week. It's beautiful, and he loves it. And when I think of radical, I think of the many people who just answer the call whenever they're asked. and whatever they need to do, whenever it is, so that our church can be great. And there's a lot of you, and you're amazing. And we don't take you for granted, but sometimes we do, and I'm sorry about that, because we never should. When I think about Radical, I think about the popular senior in Element, our student ministry, who every week purposely sits by his autistic friend so he can help his friend get through this service without distracting too many people around him. And he's graduating. Who's going to take his job? When I think about living the radical life, I think about the young disciple who's educated and poised to make a six-figure income, but who right now is on a foreign missions field teaching kids about Jesus on her own dime. Or I think about the freshman in college who made it his personal mission in high school to disciple his high school friends till he got to college. He led a Bible study group through the whole years of his high school so he could bring his friends to God. That's radical. Radical brings to me in mind an email I got from Christian Mission Fellowship, who, after seeing how you responded to sponsor childship for Nairobi, Kenya, and the results of our Hope Unlimited or Hope Kenya offering in December, he wrote me and he said this: where do we find more churches like Third City? And all of this began because a young woman came and said, hey, I think God's calling me to a bigger purpose. Can you help me find that? That's radical. Remember, Jesus said that if you try to hang on to your life, you're going to lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you'll find it. And I could have named many other people and their scenarios, but those are the ones I thought of right away. At Third City, we talk about living a radical way of life in the context of the vision of Love Unlimited. And you're familiar with that, I think, if you've been around. And we use three words then to describe how to live that out in a practical way. The words are worship, serve, and grow. Worship means that this is my life. I put it in His hands. And I say, God, what do you want from me? That's worship. It's not just some service, although this is part of it. But it's what we do with it out there. Practically, it's serving, right? I find ways in my world to be His heart, His hands, His feet, because there's needs there. How together as a church and how individually I can go into the world with the good news message of Jesus and restore God's dream for broken, hurting people, people who look like a clump of clay in a jar. But when they get into His hands, He can do something with it. That's what serving is. It's me opening the pathway for that to happen. And then when I talk about growing, that means I put myself willingly under His leadership, under His teaching, so that I can properly do what He calls me to do, because there's knowledge involved, and there's preparation involved, and there's the need to be with other believers to make it effective, and so we grow. And you know, this isn't something we made up, Love Unlimited, worship, serve, and grow. These are all biblical concepts that we just put around some core phrases. And so in the next few weeks, we're going to talk about this, how many people have discovered what it means to live their life this way, and how much more God will give you in return when you take this journey with Him. Jesus made a very simple promise. It's one that I believe wholeheartedly. Give and you will receive. And it's true. The more stuff that I try to hang on to life, the further away I get from the stuff that He wants to give me back. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to look deeper into the radical life, what it means to worship Him, to serve Him, and to grow as His followers. By the way, we're wrapping up a Rooted experience. There's been a big group of people that for the last 10 weeks or so have been in Rooted. And you hear us talk about Rooted here frequently because it's very important. We think it's important for all of us. And we'll have a summer Rooted experience. If you've not taken Rooted yet and God's prompting you to do so, I think in April we'll have sign up for Rooted that'll start in May. So take the journey with us. It's a great way to grow. You know, the radical life is not an easy life, but it's the best life. There's a man named Jim Elliot. He was a missionary, went to some of the most remote places on the planet. He was a missionary who eventually gave his life and service for God. And he said a very famous thing, something that missionaries throughout the world quote frequently. And it goes like this: He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. He is no fool who gives that which he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. Jesus had a radical dream for you and for me. And the dream is that you'd give that you can't keep so you could keep that which you'll never lose. And I think sometimes we ask the wrong question of people, in church. We say, hey, what will you give? But I wonder if the better question is this. It's the more radical question. What are you not willing to give up for the one who gave everything for you? For the one who doesn't want to live without you? I think that the thing that keeps us from living the most fulfilling life imaginable is that we refuse to give up the very thing that we think is giving us what we want. The thing that we think we get life from. And so what we do is we shape God into the thing that we want. You know what the Bible calls that? That when we make God into our own image, what does the Bible call it? There's a word for it. Idol. It's an idol. So in your life, what are you not willing to give up? It might be the best question you ever answer. What are you refusing to give to God? Is it some image that you're working over time to maintain? Is it some fear you have, a fear of failure, and you don't want to look stupid? You don't want other people to talk about you. You don't want people to judge you. Or if you step out and do something, people are going to snub you. Is it some form of power you're chasing? Power in your career, power in your status with people? Is it some power in your life? How about some level of commitment that you've gone to achieve comfort, and so you're just living it out to get what you can and to hold on to what you can achieve and what you can own? Maybe it's a relationship that you know is outside of God's plan for you, but you're going to hold on, and you're going to hold on even though you know it's not God's will for your life. What is it that you need to give up so that you can gain the thing which you can't afford to lose? That's what Jesus is saying in this statement. If you give up your life for my sake and for the gospel, you'll find your life. That statement is hard to reckon because it goes against everything that we're led to believe. It's hard to grasp the idea that if I give up everything, I'm going to gain everything back. But here's how it works. The self that Jesus tells me to give up, it's the lesser version of myself. It's all the stuff on the list that I just rattled through that is the lesser version of myself that I need to give up. And so I wasn't created to live a life in the image of self. I wasn't created to live in fear of failure. I wasn't created to put myself on some man-made pedestal. I wasn't created to live for comfort for the short period of time that I'm on this earth. I wasn't created to be yoked with an unspiritual person for the rest of my life. When I think about everyone I referred to who's living the radical life earlier, most of the people in that life would have said, man, this gets pretty crazy. This can be pretty nuts. And I guarantee you the people in their family say that. Are you crazy? Are you nuts? But I would prefer to call it radical. And I would say to you that they would not trade it for anything else in the world. As we move toward the Lord's table and toward generosity, remember this. The greatest goal in life is let God mold me into what He wants me to be. And He did something about that. He took my punishment, the punishment I deserve, to a cross. Jesus is the one who died to give me life. What might be keeping you from gaining the only thing that you can't afford to lose? Lord, as we come to this time, this moment of communion, Lord, open our imaginations to a different kind of life than the one that maybe we're living. Show us that we can trust you when you call us to the radical life. And Lord, bring to mind anything that might be keeping us from trusting you. Something that we have allowed to become an idol in our life that gets in the way. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So as the trays are being passed for the offering, I want to talk to you about what we're going to do next in our service. The praise team is going to come back, and they're going to lead us in some singing. And that's not too unusual, but we are going to ask you to do something that takes you a step further than normal when it comes to, often, we come to church and, we have a pretty steady routine about what we do here, but this is a little out of routine, so go with us on this. First of all, make a commitment to be here for the next 4 weeks. This series, Radical, can really make a difference for you if you'll take it seriously. And so if possible, be here. If you, for some reason, you have to miss a week, we do have a live stream. So go to Facebook Live and watch it there. But at the 4 stations on either side of the room, you're going to find a blank card. Mine says Radical on it right now, and I'm going to tell you about that. But there's a blank card on one side, and on the other side, there's 4 boxes. And so what we're asking you to do is to move past the fear of following Jesus and commit to a radical way of life. Think about this. When Jesus made that statement, whoever wants to come after me must deny themselves, pick up their cross and follow me. Think about the fear that created in the heart of the people around him. It would have created anxiety, fear like no other. And yet what he's shown us for now 2,000 years is that we can trust him. So today, if you're willing just to say, God, I'm going to go with you on this journey. I'm going to explore the radical way of living. Go to one of the stations during the next song or two. There's a stamp there that you can stamp the blank side of your card, Radical. Then on the other side of the card, there's 4 boxes. Be focused this week on the first of the 4 up in the upper left-hand corner. It says, I will die to blank so that I can live for you. So take some time in prayer and ask God, is there something between you and me that I need to reckon with you? Something that's keeping me from fully being alive by following you. And maybe you know what that is right now, so there's pens at the table, take one back to your seat, write in your word, then leave the pen on your seat, we'll grab it for the next group afterwards. Or maybe you need to meditate and think about this a little bit this week. Keep this card with you, bring it back every week, because every week we're going to ask you to take a new step. A step that moves you to becoming the one that God wants to mold you to be. The person that he wants you to be. And so as the praise team leads us, if you want to make your way to one of the 4 stations in your time, we have plenty of time to do this. You don't have to rush up there. Grab a card, everyone take one, stamp it Radical, and then if you want to, fill in the blank. But whatever you do this week, deal with God on this issue.
Would you stand with us as we continue in worship?
Reckless love, God. Oh,
of us in that room, in this room. We know that you've taken care of that for us, that there's no shadow you wouldn't light up for us, no mountain you wouldn't climb for us, no wall you wouldn't break through, no stronghold you can't defeat. For some of us, God, we need to believe that this morning, because we've got something in front of us, our own giant. We need you to knock down. So we call on your name this morning for that. For other of us, we may have been walking with you for a while. We may have had this opportunity long ago to call on your name. And yet you're still calling us today. So Lord, as we sing these words again, Lord, I want us to focus on the me's that we know in our lives. Maybe family members, maybe co-workers, maybe schoolmates, classmates. Who are the people that need you? Lord, if you're going to live radically through us, then those people will come to know you. And that's what we're called to this morning. That's what we're going to be called to over the course of this series. Amen. Let's sing this out again this morning. As we sing the word, there's no shadow you won't light up. Coming after me. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, then that me has already been you, and so now it's somebody else's turn. Who are those people that you're connected with? You're going to live a radical lifestyle reach for Jesus. Let's sing this together.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
What do we need to die to this morning? Let's continue in worship.
gonna let me down. Sing, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let